Welcome to What Matters Most.
We are dedicated to educating the community about holistic, metaphysical, and spiritual topics.
Each week, we discuss things that matter most in life, the things that are most important to you that may have fallen to the wayside.
We are always centered on the idea of simplifying life, connecting with our neighbors, and following our true paths.
Our mission is to empower you to live the life that you've always dreamed of living.
We invite you to focus your life on what matters most. And we're back with What Matters Most, and we're here with Chris Largent. So Chris, going into this new era of this 2012, or technically we've been in the midst of it, what are some life skills maybe that we might need, some new skills that we're going to need to prepare ourselves to make it through this time?
The first is the art of letting go. Methods that might have worked yesterday, last week, last month, last year, may not work tomorrow. Mm-hmm. The image that was always used by practically every metaphysical teacher I ever ran into was, if you think of an eggshell, there's a point up to which the chick can't survive without that shell. There's a point after which, if it doesn't break through and let go of it, it will die. So there's that movement of saying, okay, I have to know what to let go of. Mm-hmm. And then I think the second skill is going to be enhanced relationship skills. Communication skills, Marshall Rosenberg's nonviolent communication is a good example. When people take that training, it makes them realize how much when we interact with each other, our communication is accusatory and judgmental. And in fact, if we check about how we talk to ourselves, and half the time I hear myself saying, boy, what a jerk you are, look at the dumb thing you just did.
Yeah, it's true. No, it's very true.
And I just wasn't very nice to myself when I said that. So the communication skills and to allow us then to connect with each other, but also to connect with each other in a non-judgmental way. Another skill, I think, is the appreciation of diversity. If I really tap into what I can do creatively, I have to acknowledge that everybody else is doing something different, and it may complement what I'm doing, or it might be quite a contrast, but I have to appreciate that. Or my creativity ends up being something that I just get too aggressive about and pushing out there, or I think it doesn't have a place, so I pull it back. And so those skills are going to be involved. Plus, I think just the mastery of whatever skills we happen to have. That is, the educational system has, since progressive education got really popular, has focused education on information. And the old education before that, and the kind of thing that, say, Maria Montessori championed, was that education is about the mastery of skills. And so what you try to do from grades is not say it's an A student or a B student. You say what you get good grades in is what you're good at. So make sure you try to master that at a very high level. And as we master skills at a higher level, rather than just saying, well, I have enough information to get by, you know what happens? If people think they have enough information to get by, the next piece of information that overwhelms them, they feel hopeless and helpless again.
Oh, because they don't have enough. They don't feel like they really have more than what they need, right? Just enough, right?
Right. And certainly my techie kids have more information than I do about the information age. But if it's a mastery of a skill, that's something they're not going to be overwhelmed about because they know that's what they're good at. And so I think that too is going to be important. The other element is going to be the combination of individuality and community. Usually you get an emphasis on one or the other, and we need to realize that an individual really exists as an individual within a community. If I'm going to express myself as who I am, I have to have a community to do it in. If I don't have that, it's not going to happen. At the same time, the community has to have a lot of individuals who find ways to work together and understand teamwork and so on. And then mentoring.
I think helping each other or finding...
Yeah, and you think we haven't actually had a mentoring generation. I don't know how far back we'd have to go in America or Europe to find one because of wars and premature aging and so on. So we're going to need lots of mentors around, and the companion to that would be healers. I had a metaphysical teacher, I guess 25 years ago, who said if every other person on the planet became a healer tomorrow, we'd be short-handed. So...
Wow.
That's also something.
Chris, would you say that, and because you talk specifically about in this country, is mentoring something that's common in Europe? or other parts of the world?
Is it just America that's messed up, or is it kind of a whole united thing?
I think in general, Eastern and Western Europe and the United States have lost mentoring skills in general and mentoring generations. It's still around in traditional societies, and one of the best places that people can find it is to look at Malidoma Some's book, The Healing Wisdom of Africa, because Some was taken away to a French colonial school. He's from Burkina Faso in West Africa, so he was raised as a traditional European, brought back to Burkina Faso, learned all about the native traditions, and then the elder said to him, okay, his first name, Malidoma, means a person who interacts with strangers. And so they said, you've got to go out in the world and teach everybody. So as he went out, he was looking at the West, and he said, you have this very sophisticated material technology. We have a sophisticated spiritual technology. Why don't we get together? But when he was asked, what are the things that we need in the West that you have that we don't, that old traditional native societies have, he said, community, healing, and mentoring. And the native societies have a very sophisticated mentoring tradition. Europe even had it in the Middle Ages, but I don't think much of Western society has it anymore at all.
No. It's not something that you would even think of on a common level. And I'm even wondering if perhaps the mentoring element might be something that might really be incorporated or included in the change in the educational system, as you had mentioned.
Yes. Yeah. I always say to my students, I'm a dinosaur. You're looking at probably the last generation of people who stand up and give lectures, good or bad, because as the technology gets more sophisticated, you have virtual reality and so on, teachers and university professors are going to be more and more guides and mentors than people who stand up and give you the information. And I also say, if it's all about information, my cell phone is smarter than I am. It remembers phone numbers that I don't. So it's got to be more than that. And when you're mentoring, if education becomes more really experiential, then you really need mentors to help you through it.
Chris, would you actually feel that there's going to be changes on the planet, on the Earth, that's going to be creating or influencing this major shift in these elemental skills that you feel we will need going forward?
Yes, there's starting to be a joke about 2012 whenever I give a talk about it. The joke is in 2012, either something is going to happen or nothing is going to happen, and either way, people are going to need somebody to talk to. So,
I like that.
Let's assume that if nothing is going to happen, we'll all just have fun trying to figure out what kind of consciousness shift we should actually be involved in. But I have a suspicion that, yes, that things are going to happen on the planet. Again, at this point, I'm not any better than anybody else at guessing. I'm guessing along with the rest of us. But I would suspect that there is an ancient history of the Earth that native peoples have that's quite different from our history. And I think that's going to come back. Lots of times, I mean, I was chuckling at the film 10,000 BCE when it came back, as if people lived in caves and all that sort of business. And of course, we have a fair amount of anthropological evidence, and in 10,000 BCE, we had fairly sophisticated cities all over the planet. So it wasn't just people in skins and caves and spears and so on. And so, yeah, and it's interesting, you can look at it, though parts of it are controversial. There are a couple of major native scholars, Vine Deloria Jr., who just died a couple of years ago, was one of them, who always insisted that a lot of what we think is the Earth history is really a very short and very truncated version of what really happened. Wow. And the longer history is much more sophisticated. The idea, I think, another big cultural shift, the idea that somehow there are basic divisions on the planet. The idea that, for instance, Christians and Muslims can't get together and get along with each other. People of different races can't get along with each other. I think those kinds of myths are going to be exploded as people find out they have much more in common than they think they do. There is also, as I mentioned earlier, the issue of off-planet civilizations. People who are fans of UFO and alien research have been interested in that for a while, but they keep mentioning to me in classes and so on, look at the explosion of programs about aliens and UFOs, even in history. I mean, it's one thing to say they might land on the White House lawn next week. It's another to say there have been ancient aliens around. Well, if they are, I mean, it gives us a different look at our parentage. I mean, who might my great-great-grandparents have been, after all, now, you know?
Oh, yeah, exactly. What planet were they actually from?
Right, exactly. They might not have been from this neighborhood, right? So,
I also heard that there would be a change in our currency system, and the fact that it might actually get wiped out, or maybe lose its hold, or I mean, I've heard both sides of the scale, but I've heard there will be something going on with currency.
Yeah, people are always surprised to find out that I started out life as a banker. Between my degree in religion and philosophy, I was a branch manager in a bank. And what's more, I was a branch manager in the bank that was the very first debit card bank in the world. So people were always coming to study us, which was lots of fun. But in those days, there were lots of pamphlets floating around about a cashless society. And of course, if you combine that, and that started in the 70s, with the idea of the last time I read it, it was in magazines like Mother Jones and Business Ethics and so on. They quoted this statistic in the late 90s that 300 billionaires control have as much money as half of humanity. Well, that's a very absolute control over the economy in many ways. So if you put those two things together, what you have is a kind of collision course with the economy, because the old system isn't there anymore then, and there are lots of strains in the new one. So one of the logical conclusions would be to simply say we need to rethink the whole idea of exchange, and we have entire civilizations in history that actually didn't have a money system and got along just dandy.
Were they utilizing barter and things of that nature more so, Chris?
Yes. But it's very interesting because a famous economist early in the century, a man named Thorstein Veblen, who's controversial but lots of fun to read, Thorstein Veblen said, we've never really tried pure capitalism, but he said if you just leave it alone, if you don't corner a market or get greedy, the prices in capitalism, everything go to zero until it becomes just a distribution system, and you have too much because human beings are so creative. They always produce an abundance. And the example you can think of is when your neighbors start having gardens, how many tomatoes are around the neighborhood?
Oh my gosh,
What a great
Yeah.
example.
Oh, so true.
Right.
And so the idea in the economy would be that if we got to the point that we had a very sophisticated distribution system and people were allowed to be creative, we might not need to worry about shortages and scarcity and having enough money at all. There might be more than enough to go around. So it's one of the things I have heard too is the money system may change quite dramatically, and we may even end up being functionally without it. Yeah.
Wow, very neat. So Chris, tell us, what matters most to you?
I suspect for me that because right now it's the transition itself that I'm so interested in. That is, when humanity does something that's the equivalent of graduating from high school, you think, okay, we're all going to graduate and go someplace else, whatever college is going to look like, right? That's of great interest to me. And I think two parts of it. The first is I get very enthusiastic about what, say, civilization that thinks more in an interconnected way or a holistic way. What does that look like? And what does it look like practically in new sciences or new politics or new ways that we do relationships? The other that matters to me, I think, is to make sure that people are prepared for the fact that if we graduate from high school, some other people may not. It's not appropriate. They're not seniors in high school, they're juniors, and they will go do their own thing. And we have to be willing to let that happen. Lots of times, I know I'm as bad at anybody. I had this idea that I should run around and save everyone. We should all go together at the same place.
Right.
And I used to have a metaphysical teacher who would always say to me when I get like that, he'd say, what do you think? Should we save this person or leave him to God? And I'd think, yeah, I deserve that.
I like that.
The other side of it is that matters is to respect the fact that there will be some people that won't want to come with that consciousness, and to not try to force them or look down on them. It's that they have to go their own road and their own path. So I would say those two things are the ones that are the biggies for me.
Wonderful. Well, if you want to find out more information about Chris, you can visit his website at the7thacademy.org.
Well, we would like to thank you for your time spent with us today, Chris, and invite our viewers to remember once again that the simple things in life are truly what matters most. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you very
so much, Chris.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.